Well, Property Tribes is on location at the ALA Conference 2019 in London, and we have come along to the PayProp stand, and I'm joined by Neil Cobbold, who is COO of PayProp. And Neil, I thought you'd be a great person to speak to because all today at the conference we've heard so much things that could be interpreted as very negative for the sector. I think people are feeling battered by all the government legislation and the changes, and feel that there's a real shift happening in the private rented sector that's not particularly positive. And I wanted to come along to you, Neil, because I know that you always see the positive side of things, and you actually feel that there's plenty to be optimistic about.
I do, and you're right, I do always try to look for the positive line. I think it's too easy for us to see the negative line, to feel downtrodden, to feel hard done to, and sometimes it's the better approach to actually see the positive line out. When I look at what's happening within the property market, this has already happened. The financial services industry went through the retail distribution review 7 years ago now. And it was doom and gloom. The market will lose 30% overnight. It's no longer worth us doing. Investments are not going to give the return. The business, why would we ever do it? Fast forward 5 years after implementation, it's never been such a buoyant market. It's now professional. People get paid fair value for what they do, and actually they get the proper returns. And that's where I think landlords need to be looking at this positivity. Yes, it's going to be a turbulent time for the next 12 to 24 months, where we're going to need to adapt, decide what the future looks like, and find a way to change. Try things that work and that don't. But the positive way out of this is, at the end of it, we will have a professional sector that where the PRS is now a contributor of 20% of the statistics for our CPI and our RPI calculations. We contribute so much to this government that what they're trying to do is come out of the other end with a professional sector that is seen to be that contributor. And yes, it's going to be change. Yes, we're going to feel like, why has it been put on us? But if we ride it through to the other side, there will be money for everybody, there will be stability for everybody, and it'll be a fairer market. And if we were to go ahead and go now and say to people, tomorrow, you can have the same returns, we can have a fairer market, you can have a better future, would you take it? Every landlord's going to go yes. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't happen like that. With any reform that we go through, there is a period of turbulence. But what we need to do is grab that and see the opportunity to earn more at the other end, to have a better future, and that's really where all of this is steering us.
Yes, I think that's fantastic insight there, Neil. I think, particularly landlords like myself that have been in the sector for 15 years now, we've actually had it very easy. We've had very good times, we've had low interest rates, we've had, wide choice of mortgage products. Sectors do grow, they do develop, they do change. Perhaps older landlords like myself, certainly some of the threads we see on Property Tribes, people are feeling quite negative. We're looking at it from our perspective and what we've been through, but I guess new landlords coming to the sector, they're not going to have this understanding, and they are going to be able to see ways forward. They
are, and if I took it back, if I take the last 20 years, if you went back to the last 40 years and spoke to landlords there, having to go through the period of time of assured tenancies, being told that you're never going to move people out, being told that actually we have no way of actually having a deposit or actually having a way for a tenant to protect, and actually when they leave the property we're left with all of that damage because there's no deposit environment at all, that they would say you've never had it so good to have all these fixed deposits and it now being put through. So I think every time when we have change, we're worried about what we're going to lose. And I think what we've got to do is take the view, change is happening, so what can we gain? What is going to be better? What, once I get out the other side, is actually going... And I think something around being involved in something that is now a profession. A landlord has been seen for too many years as a blight. And actually coming out that actually my investment, my money that I earn, my pension, my retirement, my whole policy, I am a profession, I provide a valued service. That in itself coming out the other end will actually be a huge benefit to a lot of landlords within the market that are feeling they've got to get out because they're being barraged from all points.
Yes, indeed, and there's so much for landlords to deal with. Obviously Section 24, the new tax regime, tenant fee ban, selective licensing, lots more. legislation being consulted on at the moment. And I think, again, if you're feeling a little bit down, you tend to start looking at things through a certain lens, and that's a kind of negative.
We look for patterns. Yeah. As human beings, we're pattern generated. So when things happen for a period of time, we start attributing a pattern to it, whether that's right or wrong. I have this one where I speak with my wife where she'll say, oh, I never saw that car before, and I like it, and now I see it everywhere. Yes. And it's because as human beings, we attach a principle. We attach a pattern to something that we've heard. We'll hear a word for the first time, and then we hear it again. And it's because our brains now concentrate on patterns. That's all that's happening now. But we've got to break that pattern, because we've been in this pattern for these many years, but it's now changing. It's being forced upon us, but that doesn't mean the new pattern has to be any worse. It doesn't mean that we can't influence that and actually come out the end of it with something better and more stable. But we've got to embrace it, otherwise we'll only ever see that negative. Yeah, you go it through, everybody says the same, glass half full, glass half empty. We do a lot within Africa, and a glass with any water in it is a welcome gift. And that's what we've kind of got here. There are things and changes, but at the end, the great ability we've got to put into property, to have it as an income, to have it as a pensionable, while providing a professional, is something that a lot of countries don't even have. If you go to some, and we think over at the Germany, which has the lettings market where you're in for life, and you don't put a property in with a kitchen or a bathroom, and a tenant has to put it in themselves. Actually, when we look at what we provide into the market, we've got it good. So let's take those positives and work with what we've got. And I think there's still a lot of life left in this private rented sector and where it can go in the future.
No, I really, really like what you're saying. And I think, if you are feeling negative, there's so much anti-landlord sentiment in the media and all of this kind of thing. It's really best to, as you said, when something's going through a lot of turbulence, that's when the greatest opportunities are there, but you need to look for them, you need to embrace that change, and you need to surround yourself with other people and professionals who are wanting to move forward and feel positive.
And that's it. If we sit around with individuals and we just look at the negativity, then there's the lowest common denominator. We all get dragged down. It needs somebody to step away from that and say, no, I'm going to look at the positive. And then if we all follow, that's when we actually realise there's going to be some advantages out of here. There's going to be things that we try that fail. There's going to be things that we try that are success. But if we don't try, everybody just wallows and nobody does any better.
So what would you say, what would be your one piece of advice to landlords watching this, maybe older landlords who are feeling a bit downhearted about the sector, feel that it's, there's very, profit margins are being slimmed at every opportunity. What would be your advice to them to feel more positive going forwards?
My advice would be to re-look at what you wanted from the property. What was your end goal? Because sometimes we have a goal that was in 40 years' time, I wanted it to be this. And 20 years, I've now got used to it being one thing, but it's taken my eye off that goal. Re-look at what you wanted these properties for. Because if that property was at this point of time to provide you this liquidity, these changes, if you can still see that at the end, don't focus on this small change, this blip in your long-term requirement. If it was to actually provide you an income, and this is now going to erode that for a period of time where it's most vital, then it may be a time for you to reevaluate where you are within the market. But don't get out because it's negativity. Get out because it's your goal and you're looking at the best way to achieve that. Because we still come out of it then with a positive approach. And it's remember what you went in for. I have properties, I got into them for the capital gain. That capital gain is not going to change. If my income goes down slightly over that period of time, it is actually not going to change my capital gain goal. But I've got used to that income. But that wasn't why I took the property. So I need to recenter myself and remember what I went in for it for. Because if I talk to my dad and go to the problems and say, woe is me, because I'm now going to be taxed at this rate, and I've got an interest rate at this, and I'm struggling to get it fixed now on a buy-to-let, and he tells me the rates that he was having to pay during the 80s, being in with property, he tells me I've never had it so good. And it allows me to refocus. Actually, what am I wanting to get from this? And I think sometimes we can get too mired in the detail and not remember the bigger picture goal of why we wanted to be landlords, why we want to be property owners, what it was actually to give us. And I still don't think within this country, as an investment mechanism, there is anything better than property. It's become more turbulent, but let's remember what we've actually got, the opportunity we have.
Well, you can't feel more positive than that, and I guess what you're saying is keep your eye on the prize. And I think property, we try and advocate on Property Tribes that it is a long-term investment, maybe a longer-term horizon for new landlords than when I started out 15 years ago. But I think what you've said makes me think that at the time it feels like a roller coaster, but when you look back in 10 years' time, it was a speed bump.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's a speed bump, and it's a speed bump to make a downhill road. At the moment, we are slowly going uphill, and this is a speed bump that we go through so that we can now be going downhill. It's going to be good, but we've just got to go through this pain first.
Yes. Well, fantastic to have your insights on this topic, Neil.
Lovely to speak
it's
to you.
like a vitamin injection talking to you. You've got so many good insights to share. Thank you very much for being part of the Property Tribes TV interview. And everybody watching this, please do comment on the thread below. We would like to hear your views. I was at the Landlord Investment Show a few days ago, and a lot of people came up to me and were feeling very down. And I think that we as a community can all help each other stay positive, stay optimistic, and see where those opportunities lie. And Property Tribes intends to be at the forefront of that, and input from people like Neil, so respected in the industry, is great for our community. So thank you again, Neil.
No problem. Thank you.